Thank you. I'm hoping you all can hear me. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for beaming me in. I know it's never as much fun as being in person. But in my defense, I am doing this and then running to the airport because I'm running a global messaging program in Ireland. So this is the last thing I'm doing before I go to the airport. So I couldn't make it to Texas on the way. It's lovely to be with you. I'm going to take us on a little whirlwind tour of really how to confront this authoritarian moment, both electorally, morally, in terms of direct action, and then we will have Q&A. So for a very long time, I would argue we have operated not just in Texas, but in many, many, many places across the country in what I'm calling on this slide theory of change B, where we believe that we still have some semblance of a democracy and that the harms that Trump and the MAGA regime are causing to everyday people will turn the tide against them. The way to address MAGA is through courts and electorally. We'll take them in the midterms, we'll win the presidency, and that's sort of how we will deal with this. And my argument to you, and the basis upon which I will give the rest of the advice, is that that theory of change has already proven itself extraordinarily broken. And if it's proven itself broken anywhere, it's probably proven itself broken in Texas as sort of the canary in this coal mine. Electoral wins, in point of fact, on the national level in 2018 and 2020, and staving off the worst of the quote red wave in 2022, did not actually save us, as I think you all know. And this idea that we can vote and or sue our way to democracy has been pretty soundly disproven. And so it is not that voting is not important. It is critically important. It is not that the work of the extraordinary lawyers and all of the democracy defense people is not important. It is extraordinarily important. It is that all of those things are necessary but not sufficient. When we look through research, and we are in the field every single week in qualitative and every other week in quantitative as part of the Research Collaborative, which is an org I helped found, which, as the very, very boring name suggests, just does research all the time into voters' attitudes. What we need people to believe, depicted here on the left, is that this is an existential crisis as opposed to, this is just sort of, sometimes we have a right-wing government, sometimes we have a left-wing government, kind of normal. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't like it, but we haven't sort of departed from anything meaningfully uh, right-wing. That MAGA harms me directly and via harms to others, that we have some sort of sense of, as scholars call it, linked fate, that their shame and blame story, that it's the immigrants or it's the queer people or it's the uppity feminists, take your pick, is in fact BS. And that people like me are against this. I'm going to come back to that over and over and over again. We also need people to believe that we, the people, actually are the ones that could end this, and that the Roberts Court, which I intentionally do not call the Supreme Court, is very, very much complicit. They're not just aiding and abetting, they helped usher this in. Where too many folks currently are in this darker purple circle on the right is, like I said, standard partisan difference. The cost of living is too high. That's a great thing. That, of course, is important for people to believe. Maybe immigrants and trans people are the problem. Maybe that's why things are rough. Am I the one overreacting? I can't tell you how much it is the staple of every one of our focus groups for the first 5, 10 minutes, no matter what the cohort is with whom we're speaking, where people just basically are like, it seems like things are pretty bad, but I don't know, are they bad? Am I the one overreacting? Other people don't really seem to be acting as if things are really bad. So I'm not sure if I just think they are. It's as if we have some people saying, your house is on fire, your house is on fire, your house is on fire, but actually the firefighters aren't coming to take you out. And so, how do you reconcile hearing some of the time the house is on fire, but purportedly the people in charge aren't trying to get you out? You're not sure which one is the truth and which one is the lie. the institutions will come save us, whether that be the courts, whether that be, I don't know, business community, universities, kind of the pillars of society. And still, too many people are operating under the notion that the Supreme Court is venerated. It's the only and singular legit authority on the Constitution and on laws. So, what we know from scholars of authoritarianism, and this is true both in our own US history and in movements abroad. I get to work abroad a lot. I'm happy to talk about that. Just yesterday, as you may have seen, the Supreme Court of Brazil sentenced Bolsonaro to 27 years in prison for his attempted coup in 2022, an attempted coup where he wasn't even present, and it was after the current president Lula was actually already inaugurated. But still, the court took decisive action. He's going to appeal, but all of the legal community that I know in Brazil, I worked on the Lula race, says that by the end of the year, he will in fact be in prison for his actions. So, what actually makes the difference when we want to make a so-called U-turn out of where we are right now, which is formally known as competitive authoritarianism? That is what political scientists name our current state. We need activation. And or, as we know it in the US, good trouble. So that's actions, that's mass mobilization, and that's non-compliance. Why does this work? People often be like, well, what does a protest actually get you? Well, what does a direct action actually get you? What it gets you is that it undermines the support for the regime. It erodes the legitimacy. One of the big reasons why, and people don't know this, January 6th was not a successful effort. The reason why not enough Republicans went along with not certifying was because the business community was like, no, 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 no. This is a bridge too far, and you will, in fact, certify. I can tell you because I know that from an insider view. And right now, too many of our institutions are just tacitly going along with this. We have to make it impossible for the pillars of society to go along with it. And we have to incentivize so-called softliners within the regime to not want to continue to be part of it because it's simply too costly. When you think about why Brian Kemp didn't magically find the 11,000 plus votes, it's not out of the goodness of his heart. Let's be honest with ourselves. It's because he knew that if he did that, Trump still wasn't going to win and he was going to get in trouble for it. And so it has to be uncomfortable to go along with the regime. That is how we undermine authoritarianism. We know, as many of you probably have heard, the scholarship of Erica Chenoweth, that generally speaking, in movements in which a mere 3.5% of a population has been engaged in continuous civil resistance, that doesn't mean a one-time protest. That means out there continuously all the time. No authoritarian has withstood that. So we are not in a 50% plus one kind of situation, and we have to sort of shift our mindset. We are very much in the choir has got to go from singing to being outside giving constant concerts, if you will allow the metaphorical extension. In fact, what we find is that when there is a civil resistance movement, over half of those movements actually succeed in toppling authoritarianism. And when there is no civil resistance, there is just an attempt to reset things electorally and legally, only 7.5% of those movements actually succeed. This is looking across the world. So people power, people power, people power. Winning pro-democracy campaigns, I know I keep saying this because it's actually really important, requires getting more people, but still not 50% of people, not even 10% of people, but a healthy chunk of people out and loud and proud about our pro-democracy views. There's all sorts of different types of actions. I will make sure you get these slides because I don't expect that you are sort of grokking all of this in real time. But these are examples of the kinds of things that are required. It has to go beyond resistance. Resistance is important. It's the floor, not the ceiling. Resistance is marching. Resistance is posting on social media. Resistance is speaking out, having a lawn sign. Refusal is when, for example, a National Guard person who has been called up says, I quite simply cannot do this. That is an example of refusal. And ridicule is, as the name suggests, taking down the image of the quote unquote strong man, which the authoritarian relies upon, by making clear he is a sad, pathetic little bully and can, in fact, be taken down. So, in terms of messaging, which is my expertise, or at least that's the claim, how do we do all that? How do we build a movement that is both involved in direct resistance, refusal, and ridicule, and at the same time is also moving us forward electorally? Because again, that matters too. Rule number one, and if you only remember one thing I say today, please have it be say what you're for, say what you're for, say what you're for. All too often on the left, we are a no and a don't and a stop and a can't. We are in opposition instead of in proposition. And there's a lot of things to be in opposition to. So that makes sense that we're often in opposition. But what happens when we are a no and a don't and a stop and a can't is that we are inadvertently repeating the opposition. Immigrants are not criminals. Muslims are not terrorists. Wind turbines do not cause cancer. Leave without pay is not okay, right? Ningún ser humano es ilegal. Trans people are not a burden. Cuts, we don't want we want to cut profits, not jobs and services. What we find in testing, what social science has shown, is that when you put two loaded words together like immigrant and criminal, the not is basically silent. People recall the assertion and they do not recall whether it was true or false. This happens also at another level. It happens in our earnest effort to call out the opposition by, saying, can you believe they're saying this? Can you believe they're doing this? Can you believe this? So, for example, last year during the election, when the odious lies were spread about Haitian immigrants, I'm sure everybody remembers the eating the dogs and eating the cats line. What research shows is that most normie people who do not follow politics like it is their, gossip magazine, like those of us here right now. I know it's hard to believe, but some people are not paying attention. And in fact, that's the majority. They heard about that line not from the debate, not from Vance's claims, but from the viral memes and the making fun of it. So, in an earnest effort to make fun of it and to hopefully sort of call out how odious it was that Trump and Vance were saying this, it actually was just spreading the actual claim. The same goes with parroting their language around quote unquote alligator Alcatraz. We have to remember that they have a 24/7 writer's room of hatred. I imagine them to have like a very large table where they are constantly like, what new hateful thing can we put into the discourse now? What hideous, odious thing can we make people attach onto? And when we repeat that by using their name, we are helping them. It's a concentration camp. It meets the formal definition of a concentration camp, and we need to be calling it that. The same goes for the sanguine use of the phrase immigration policy. Immigration policy is a thing. It is the laws and the customs, the rules that we make around the movement of people into a country, right? And in a democratic society, we can have a reasonable debate about immigration policy. People can have different views about how many visas should be issued, how long should it take to get a green card, how long should you have to stay before citizenship, what should that entail, which kinds of visas. That's a reasonable set of arguments, and people can disagree. What we cannot have disagreement about in a democratic society is whether or not it's okay to have people, masked agents, steal people off of our streets, abduct and kidnap them. That's not immigration policy. And when we say voters are turning against Trump's immigration policy or voters are not happy with Stephen Miller's immigration policy, none of those things are immigration policy. They're crimes against humanity. And we need to call them that because otherwise, immigration policy doesn't mean anything. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where we have landed is in three I would argue, pretty unhelpful narratives about immigrants. One is that they are villains. I don't think I need to spell that out for you, but I do want to remark that all of the words that you see upon this screen come from the left. These are not from the right. So here is the left pro-immigrant discourse. There is no evidence that immigration, and in particular, the recent influx of immigrants to Democratic-run cities, is causing a crime wave. Thank you so much for telling me that there is no evidence, but actually just putting front and center Democratic-run city influx, immigrants, crime. Great. Or that they're victims, what I call the ay pobrecitos narrative, where we earnestly want you to feel sorry for those people. We do this all the time, right? We have so much sympathy-based messaging. And that ay pobrecitos could be about immigrants. It could be about people facing homelessness. It could be people struggling with addiction. It could be people who are victims of state violence. Goes on and on and on. But when we are trying to create sympathy, i.e., I need you to feel badly for those people, what we're doing is we're othering. That's still those people, which means not us. And then the third narrative, which I shorthand as valets, so it's handily alliterative, which just stands in for doing jobs nobody wants. When we use discourse that is about immigrants doing jobs nobody wants, or they pick our food, or they clean our houses, or they this, or they that, notice that they do things for us, in which case they are an object and not an agent. None of these three narratives is going to get us out of this mess. What we find over and over again is that in order to persuade people, you need to create an overlap of brand identity between whatever it is you're talking about, could be immigrants in this case, could be people who need government support, could be public school teachers, could be you name it, an overlap of brand identity between whatever it is you're talking about and the people that you're trying to persuade. You need to start from what they share in common and then go into why there is a particular harm to the group. So here is an example of doing that from an ad that we aired recently that we made with the NEA, the Teachers Union. You'll notice the deliberate use of the word abductions, but basically what's going on here is that rather than begin with the harms and horrors, which actually reinforces the idea, potentially, at least in conflicted voters' minds, that maybe immigrants did do something wrong. I don't know. I see the police coming to arrest them. When I see the police coming to arrest people, I assume they've committed a crime. To focusing on something that is sort of universally beloved. We first released this for Father's Day, and then we did a re-release on 4th of July. So say what you're for, say what you're for, say what you're for. The next how to make believe principle is to sell the brownie, not the recipe. All of us know this box. We have seen this box at the grocery store. We know that that's a picture of a brownie on the box. And sadly, we also know that when you open this box, there's no brownie. There is a bag of powder, and on the back, there is a set of steps that you have to follow to turn said powder into said brownie. And you even have to add the most expensive ingredients. Not only is there no brownie in this box, there's not even the things to make the brownie. And yet on the box is a picture of a brownie, not a picture of a kitchen that is a mess with bowls and mixers and so on, right? So when I say sell the brownie, not the recipe, what I mean is when we ask Americans, do you think we should have a nationalized paid leave program? The majority say yes. When we instead say, do you think you should be there the first time your newborn smiles? More people say yes. When we say, do you think that we should raise minimum wage? Most people say yes. When we say, do you think you should be able to put food on the table, be home in time to eat it? More people say yes. So you need to stop taking your policies out in public. Your policy is not your message. You can talk about your policy in rooms like the one that you're in right now. That's totally fine. The policy people, you can have yourselves a nice old time, but that's not your message. You have to message the experience of a life with your policy in place. So here is an example of brownie selling.
In the world we want, everyone is free, and you feel free wherever. You are at home everywhere. You decide your future for yourself, and no politician tells you there's only one way to dress, or feel, or think, or love. Our world is a celebration. The society we want uplifts everyone. Our power comes from empowering. So no matter who you are, where you are going, or where you come from, our future is for all of us.
That's brownie, right? There isn't a policy mentioned, but I think if we dissected the ad, we could come up with a set of policies that would align with that. The next principle is that order matters. We find that the same message, the same three sentences shifted around, test to have a remarkably different result. So I'm going to show you an ad that is in the correct order, and then I will break down that order. Well, I won't tell you what this is about. The ad will tell you what this is about.
Our money could go here, or it could go here. Our money could go here, or it could go here. Just imagine where our money could go if corporations paid what they owe instead of taking it for themselves. Tell your state representatives to demand corporations pay what they owe.
This is from a big project that we did. And by the way, all of the stuff that we do is open source. We only sign contracts that let us give away everything that we learn and do. So if you go to our website, messaging guides are there, ads are there. We don't try to do projects more than once. We're not trying to do that. We are trying to do a thing and then give it away. So this is from a big project that we did around state revenue and how to convince people to actually want to tax more. That's called Fund Our Futures, and that's where the toolkit is. So the order, and that ad subverts it a tiny bit. I will explain how, but the general order is positive, negative, positive. What that ad does is positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. It just sort of complicates it a little, but the generalized order is positive, negative, positive. Or more concretely, values, villain, vision. So in the Father's Day 4th of July ad, the value was people hanging out with their families, right? Having a nice time in the ways they like to have a nice time. The villain, which came in at the like 2/3 mark, was the ice. And then the vision was America, families make America beautiful. And basically what we're doing here is instead of launching in with what I like to call boy, have I got a problem for you messaging, which is our favorite. We love boy, have I got a problem for you. We love this is the Titanic. Would you like to buy a ticket? Also very keen on we lose a lot. We lost recently, so you should join us. None of those work as opening salvos, which I know is surprising. Instead, what you want to do is create this very big we, this very desirable thing so that people are like, yes, that is how I want to live. That is the world that I want. That is how I want to treat other people. Or that is where I want money going. That is how I want things to be where I live. And then you introduce the villain second. Who is getting in the way? Just imagine how far our money could go if corporations pay what they owe. By the way, pay what they owe language, very deliberate, much more effective than their fair share. Fair is in the eye of the beholder. Some people think a flat tax is fair. Pay what they owe implies that they are already in arrears. They've already gotten behind. And then we close with, again, that brownie. Next, politics isn't solitaire. So we need to remember that politics is a shouting match, not a soliloquy. Our voters do not just hear from us, and in fact, they very much hear from the opposition much more often. And I don't think I need to tell you what they hear from the opposition because you are at ground zero of that. But it is its own version of the acronym CRT. In this case, I mean crime, race, trans. The right, not just within the United States, but actually around the world. Look at Orban, look at the language of Brexit, look at the language of Duterte, look at the language of Bolsonaro, look at the language of the Nazis, look at the language of any right wing authoritarian movement. And it is made out of saying, would you like to know why your life is hard? Would you like to know why you feel like you can't get a break? Would you like to know why you feel like you can't retire? Why your kid can't get into college? Why you're having a hard time? Why you feel out of place? It's because of those people who simply don't want to work, those people who don't teach their kids the right thing, those people who don't believe in our way of life, those people who are trying to change our society. And any agent of government that tries to aid and abet those people is bad. And we will crush and destroy them so that we can make this country great again for the true people. That is the siren song of the right wing authoritarian. It has always been. And while the effect, excuse me, of that kind of discourse creates enmity against Black people, against brown people, against queer people, against quote unquote feminists, its core purpose, it's important to understand, is actually to create a disgust of and a distrust of government itself. That's the reason for it. The reason for it is to undermine a hunger and a desire for normal things like universal health care, broad-based labor protections, universal family leave, because we're meant to believe we can't have this kind of collective okayness in our society that we fund together because of those people who don't want to work and who don't want to do the right thing and who are, takers instead of makers, who are moochers, who are back in the day, welfare queens or committing inner city crime, or more recently, of course, illegals, right? Or gender ideology. And that breeds economic resentment and status threat, and the cycle goes on and on and on. They have one story. For far too often, the way that the center left and the left has reacted to this is by going la 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 la. In other words, either saying, okay, well, we just won't talk about that. We just won't talk about race. We just won't talk about immigrants. We just won't talk about abortion. We just won't talk about, and in fact, with abortion, even naming it the A word and saying we can't go there. But if the just don't talk about it strategy fails to recognize that we don't get to pick what is in discourse, the we won't talk about it strategy is giving people a headphones, and in one ear is unrelenting hate, unrelenting xenophobia, unrelenting racism, unrelenting sexism. And then in the other ear, there's silence. That doesn't make what they're saying go away. In fact, it only gives it more power because we're not even attempting to counter it. And what they're doing for people is they're giving them an origin story. They're saying, I see your pain. I see your struggle. I see your upset. And I'm going to tell you why. And we simply are like, well, I'm not going to tell you why. Or arguably worse, what we often do is actually credit the right wing story. We say, yeah, you're kind of right. It is the border. Yeah, you're kind of right. It is trans people. Yeah, you're kind of right. It is that we've gone too far into wokeness. When we do that, we actually help the right because we're saying that their story is true. And instead of doing the thing that it is trying to do, which is like, so that's why you should pick us because you can still have some of their thing, but also some of ours. It just says that their version of events is the accurate one. And when you offer people full fat and light, they're going to pick full fat. So instead, we have to actually counter what they're saying by giving a different origin story, by explaining to people in essence, yeah, it is true. Someone did take your job. You're right. And someone did take your health care, and someone did take your retirement, and someone did take your ability to occasionally take a road trip to go have a nice time at the beach with your family once in a while. Would you like to know who took your money? It's the people with all the money. That's how you know. And because it's the people with all the money, they desperately need you to point your finger anywhere else. Because God forbid working people of every race, every color, every background, every accent, every faith tradition get wise to who actually is screwing all of us over. And so it's an insistence on solidarity across all the axes of division in order to create a government that actually looks like us, represents us, works for us toward the goals of prosperity, justice, equality. So, what does that mean in practice? Here is an example from 2024 of doing that on immigration. Again, remember this creating an overlap of brand identity to start, values, and then villain, and then vision.
Most of us will do whatever it takes to make a better life. We work and even pack up everything so we can provide for our families. Immigrant Americans move for the promise of freedom and opportunity. Democrats offer real solutions, create a fair immigration system, and make the border work. Republicans block them. They want chaos and conflict as distractions from how they're taking away what our families need. Let's trade Republicans' hate peddling for Democrats' problem solving.
What we found in testing, in combat testing, meaning that we subjected everyone in the sample first to a vitriolic Trump ad and then this one, or the vitriolic Trump ad and then the Kamala Harris ad, where she in 30 seconds uses border 5 times in voice and 6 times in writing, is that this was far better at bringing people out the other side to the vote choice that we needed. Because in the matchup of border, border, and also border, border, what people come out the other side with is I want RoboCop, not mall security. You have to give a different explanation for what's going on and get people to understand what their higher order value is. So that last one was the way of doing it in sort of an earnest tone. You can also do it in a humorous tone.
A terrifying monster is coming. Beware of
It's just a rainbow?
the rainbow.
I'm sorry, why is this scary?
Nothing can stop this indecent symbol of peace and freedom.
Rainbows are pretty beautiful, though.
Republican lawmakers want you to stay afraid, so you don't notice everything they're doing to you.
I feel like that's the scary thing. Can we edit this?
Watch out for the terrifying menace. Republicans in office.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
So again, same concept, just sort of done in a humorous tone. The value being, equality, love, prosperity, rainbow, and the villain being who the villain is. So I told you before that the order is values, villain, vision. I'm still telling you that. This is just putting some meat on the bones. Again, opening value, getting more specific. You want to name that value or show it if you're doing visuals in a way that actually makes it clear this is shared across whatever the hell they say we don't hold in common, whether that be being from different genders, being from different classes, being from different races, being from different religions, different places of origin. When I say open with a shared value, I want to be very specific because sometimes people get confused. A shared value is not a shared outcome. Saying whether we're black, white, or brown, native or newcomer, most of us believe that people who work for a living ought to earn a living. That's a shared value. When we say black, white, or brown, native or newcomer, all of us have it the same and have the same struggle. That's just an untruth. So a shared value is a statement of, in America, we value our freedoms, or most of us look after our neighbors, or most of us want to leave our kids a better world. Those are aspirational things that we desire. Those are values. Saying we all have it the same, or we're all experiencing the same levels of whatever. That's an assertion of an outcome, and that's false. So that's not what I'm saying to do. Hopefully that's clear. We name the villain second, as I said before, and we do so specifically explaining how they either exploit division across race or lack of familiarity with trans people in order to, and this motivation is important, in order to either get into power, hold on to power, get more money, give their cronies more money. We have to explain the why, not just the what. We emphasize unity and collective action to achieve victory. That's just an additional step a yes, we can step. And then we connect whatever we're asking people to vote, to join, to donate, to march, to whatever is your call to action with some brownie, with a positive vision. So we did some work actually specifically testing in Texas a couple of years ago. And the narrative that we came up with, also in a toolkit, was this idea of in Texas, we know our worth and we're worth more than this. This was the top testing, know our worth message. And I have broken it out for you here in the order that I just talked about. Texans across race, place, and background know our worth. We are worth paychecks that equal the true value of our work, quality schools that teach the truth of our past, and clean air, water, and energy that our families can depend on. You can always adapt these things. You don't have to use all of them. You can cut from that to make it shorter. Now comes the villain. We are worth more than the politicians in power in our state who abandon us in times of trouble. Notice this is a C3 message. Then hope will shame and blame Black and brown, transgender, and new Americans for our struggles. Our vote is our power. And when we join together as voters, we can elect leaders who know our worth and chart a better future where every Texan in every corner of our state has the freedom to thrive, no exceptions. So that's a Texas example. Finally, if your words don't spread, they don't work. This should be the least controversial thing I ever say. And for some reason, it's the one that like I cannot get to penetrate. A message that nobody hears cannot persuade them. That feels like just duh, right? If no one hears what you're saying, you did not persuade them. So we rightly spend all of this time, and it's true, being like, we don't have an echo chamber, we don't have a Fox News, we don't have a Truth Social, we don't have a captured media, we don't have a Joe Rogan, we don't have a this, we don't have a that. And they have all of this to spread their haterade. True, 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 true. And that's a big deal. I'm not discounting that as a big deal. What I am simply adding to that is if you want to touch a nerve, you're going to have to touch a nerve. And if you want people to hear what you're saying, you're going to have to say things that are not boring. And so when we become like, well, we have to carefully calibrate our message to this perfectly whatever thing so this median voter that we've imagined doesn't get upset with it. What that means is that you've upset no one. You've also reached no one.
True.
So a message is like a baton that has to be passed from person to person to person, especially if we are not in the realm of $5 million Super Bowl ad buys, right? We are not Beyonce, I hate to tell us. And so what that means is that far from lamenting that we are, quote, only preaching to the choir, we need to remember that the choir is where the trouble starts. If the choir does not want to sing from the songbook, then the congregation is not going to hear the joyful noise and go out and convert the conflicted. What the right wing has always done is when they do a test and they're like, oh, we tested critical race theory, and people were like, I don't know what that is. I certainly don't care about it. It's not on my top 50 list of issues, let alone top 10. They don't say, oh, the poll says this isn't people's top issue. They keep saying their top issue is the economy. They say, amazing, an empty vessel. We shall populate it with horrific meaning. Meanwhile, Democrats are like, oh, it's not in people's top 10 issue. We're not going to talk about it. So in, for example, the Virginia governor's race in 2021, they took critical race theory, which literally like 7 people had heard of, right? Very, very erudite, incredibly sophisticated and smart scholars in the legal profession knew what this was. The rest of America was like, I don't know what that is. The same is true with DEI. When they started with their DEI stuff, most people were like, what does that stand for? I don't know. Is it a company? Is it a credo? Like, I don't know what that is. They don't walk away when they find that. They say, perfect. We will equip our choir with hatred and we will create an entire surround sound strategy. So if you will recall, they dragged those university presidents in to force them to do hearings in Congress because they don't just put out an ad. They don't just have some talking points. They figure out, how do we create an AstroTurf group called Moms for Liberty and send them into school board meetings and then take little videos of themselves so that we can make everybody believe this is the biggest deal anyone ever had. And every time that happens, even though this is literally their only trick, this is the thing that they do over and over and over and over and over again, we act brand new. And Terry McAuliffe, who was the candidate in Virginia, when he was asked, well, what do you make of CRT? He said, the gaffe heard around the world, well, I just don't think parents should have anything to say about kids' education, which any human being is like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because he wasn't equipped to actually respond, even though we know they're going to keep doing this because it's the only thing that they do. So we need to have this choir equipped with a message that explains a different origin story, and we need them repeating it over and over again. A concrete example of doing this from Argentina, this was from the campaign to repeal the ban on abortion, was the pañuelo verde, the green handkerchief, which was part of the Marea Verde, which swept Latin America. A handkerchief because of the legacy of the Madres de la Plaza who would wear white kerchiefs during the Argentine dictatorship. And this kerchief is very loud. It is not subtle. It literally says aborto legal ya, legal abortion now. Even if you don't speak Spanish, I think you know what that means. And this kerchief became so popular in Buenos Aires that you could not obtain it. I worked on this campaign and I had to like beg, but I'm like, I don't get a handkerchief. Are you kidding me? Give me a fucking handkerchief, because they were so popular. People were like going nuts for them. This is the equivalent of the odious red MAGA hat. If your choir does not want to proudly be like, yes, this is what I think, then the middle, the conflicted, are actually never going to hear you in the first place. So this was the engage the base strategy. Of course, there is not enough of the base anywhere. It's not just in Texas, it's anywhere. And when I say the base, I want to be very specific. I don't mean the activists. I mean the people who are ideologically aligned with you, but not doing anything yet. They agree with you, but they do not wear the hat. They agree with you, but maybe they vote. They don't talk to their neighbors. They don't, refuse to shut up about this. They don't bring it up at work. They don't bring it up on Facebook. That's the base. The base is people who agree with you and need to be moved into being real loud about it. Even in Texas, that is a sizable portion of people. The activists are folks like you. You already get it and you're already loud about it. There's not enough of us. Of course, we also have to convert the conflicted. What we find with the conflicted is that they're not actually the middle. If they were the middle, that implies they have a fixed position, they have a set of beliefs. They don't. What we find over and over again is when we ask them, do you agree, disagree? Immigrants contribute to our culture and community. We're all the better for having them here. The majority of them say yes. When we say, do you agree? Immigrants are a problem and cause a drain and we need to have mass deportations. The majority of them say yes. They are what I like to call the good point people. Good point. But yeah, good point. But also good point. The way that the right approaches the conflicted is they get their choir, their odious, terrible base, to convert them toward their worldview. The way that we approach the conflicted all too often is like, oh, darn, I guess they believe this thing, not recognizing they also believe this other thing. And we try to change our position, our messaging, our values to meet them where they are. There's nowhere that they are. That's why they're conflicted. We have to move them toward us. When you're playing a sports game, you're playing soccer, and the ball's over there, you don't say, damn, the ball's over there. What am I going to do? You have to move the ball toward the goal if you would like to win. That's what persuasion is. In Argentina, these conflicted folks largely resided outside of Buenos Aires, where 40% of the population dwells in the provinces. And the campaign for these conflicted folks was Salvemos miles de vidas. We will save thousands of lives. In an issue area in which the opposition has claimed the mantle pro-life, that's true in Argentina as well, that's not just a US thing, they were like, no, we're the pro-life people and we're going to call our campaign for the provinces. We're going to save thousands of lives. And they used doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners and other medical providers telling stories of times when they had to give treatment to people who had come in and either attempted to do some terrible harm to themselves because of an unwanted pregnancy, whether it was dangerous or not, having to treat people who were in some sort of like the ravages of a very, very dangerous pregnancy, and how much they desperately wanted to be able to save people's lives, and this law didn't allow them to. And then finally, we have to recognize that there is a group of people who cannot, shall not, will never agree with us. Never, 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 never. But even in Texas, this is not the majority, because when I refer to this group of people, I do not mean the Republicans in the sample. I mean the people who, to their core, believe we shouldn't have a minimum wage. We shouldn't have equality laws. We shouldn't allow women out of the household, etc. And this is some people. It truly is. But it is not the majority. It is not even all Republicans. Now, we normally counsel that what you want to do is make these folks look like the outliers that they are, which you can already see happening, for example, in the shift of opinion around these horrific abductions and disappearances, where it used to look like people were in support of what was called, shame on pollsters, immigration policy, which was never immigration policy, to now, oh, it seems like people are against this. People were always against this. They just didn't know what it actually was. So we counseled to make them look like outliers. In Argentina, they actually went a step farther and they decided to antagonize the opposition. In the last sprint of the campaign, in the first round of voting, the lower chamber voted yes on repealing the ban, and the Senate voted no. And so they made these neon green hangers. In Argentine Spanish, they call this perchas. And they hung the name of every senator who voted no from the trees in front of the Capitol, and they called them Senador Percha, Senator Hanger. Imagine for a minute the notion of Senator Pedophile or House Member Pedophile. If we were to actually say that about the folks who will not release the Epstein files. And in the second round, they flipped and they voted yes. If you want to touch a nerve, you're going to have to touch a nerve. Otherwise, people aren't going to hear what you're saying.
That's amazing.
And then they won. I can stop so we make sure to have Q&A. I have one more section. Nancy, you tell me what to do.
What did you just say? I'm so sorry.
I said I can either finish or I can stop myself so that we can make sure to have Q&A. I realize
go ahead and finish. Everybody is really into it.
Okay. You're all blurry to me, so I'm like, I know what's going on.
I say let's go for it.
Okay. All right. The
Okay.
real last one, make your audience into agents. So one of the most persuasive tools that we have in our belt is something called social proof. This is I call this the middle school theory of messaging. This is just simply the recognition that people do the thing they think people like them do. People are social creatures. The world is complicated. We don't have time. We don't have mental load to be thinking through everything. And so there's a reason why if you go to a new town and there's a giant line of people waiting for ice cream here and no line of people waiting for ice cream there, you get in the line. It's because you're like, that must be really good ice cream because other people think it's really good ice cream. So therefore it's really good ice cream and you will wait for it. And so how does that manifest in messaging? Here's an example from Brazil, from the Lula race. In Brazil, voting is compulsory after age 18. I know, imagine. But the voting age is 16. I know, imagine. So there's this cohort of folks, 16 to 18, who could vote, but had really, really low rates and had been declining of participation going into the 22 election. And actually part of the reason why Bolsonaro was able to win the first term is because these 16 to 18-year-olds were basically like, fuck it. So crafted this campaign, which was called Speak Yourself in non-grammatical English. Why? Because K-pop, believe it or not, very popular in Brazil. And there was a tour of the most popular K-pop band, BTS, and they called their tour Speak Yourself. And so this campaign was Speak Yourself. It was also voiced as, if you don't decide, they'll decide for you, right? I often think about the moment in the marriage ceremony, if anybody should have an objection to these people, blah, 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 speak now or forever hold your peace. That is a very strong voting message. In our ads, almost always, you will notice that the protagonist of the ad is not the politician. And the reason for that is not just because of how people feel about politicians, Democrats and Republicans alike. It's also because the purpose of the ad or the talking point or the social media post or the whatever is to make the audience member, the voter, want to do a thing. And if you want the person watching to do a thing, you have to cast them as the agent, not so and so will come to save us, so vote for so and so. It's we are coming to save us by voting for leaders. So that is where I will leave you with our closing ad about reminding people of our power. And that is extraordinarily important in every time, and even more important right now when we understandably feel so horrifically terrified and demoralized and upset. It is all the more important that we remind people that we actually can do this. And in fact, we always have.
The path will be twisted and risky and slow, but keep marching, cause your ancestors are all the proof you need that progress is possible, not guaranteed. It will only be made if we keep marching on. Keep marching on.
And I'll stop there.
So Anat, would you want to take a question or two, or are you out of time?
Sure. No, I specialize in getting to the airport when they're closing. They're like, I specialize in the airport sprint. That's my claim to fame.
Oh,
So,
okay, that sounds good. If somebody would like to come up and sit in the seat and ask Anat a question, who would like to come up? That way she can see you. Would anybody like to ask a question? Okay, come on up. Okay, so this is Diane Kearns. She used to be my neighbor.
Hey there. Thank you
Hi.
so much. This is so informative. One of the things that's keeping me up at night is I have a young son who is almost 18, and I continually have to combat the things that he says to me that he hears from TikTok, from his bro friends. How do you talk to someone, a young man, specifically a young voter, and get your message across about, vote for your best interests and why voting is important? How do you talk to these young men?
And is what you're getting, I like a yeah, feminists did destroy everything, or is what you're getting a like, fuck it, they're all corrupt, why bother?
No, it's the feminist. I'm like, you do know your mother is a woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what I would say to that is, especially when you're in one-on-one communication as opposed to broadcast. So broadcast is like, I'm making an ad, it's for a lot of people. I'm doing a speech, it's for a lot of people. I'm like writing a talking point, it's for a lot of people. One-on-one is what you're describing, right? Or few on one, you're actually having a conversation first, and it's very hard, especially I would imagine if it's your own kid. I also have an 18-year-old. He's leaving for college any minute now. What I would say is, oh, that's really interesting. Tell me more about what you heard. And I would like find the whatever, I mean, whatever you use to like get through the contractions in labor, whatever that is, bite down on a rag, but don't let him see it. And let him tell you, actually it's men who are, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I know most of these talking points. I would say, wow, that's really interesting that you heard all that. Um, what do you think is the hope from someone who says that? Like, what do you think they're hoping happens by telling folks that? Or what is it about that makes it feel true to you that is different than what I say to you, the person who knows you and lives with you? Because it seems to me like if you look around, there's a whole lot of people struggling. And young men are struggling too. There is absolutely no doubt. And I can see you. I can see you, I'm making this up. You keep applying for jobs and there aren't any. And it sucks. It sucks being 18 right now and not being able to get ahead. And so what I try to do is figure out, who isn't struggling right now? Who has it? Not just good, but really easy. And what I see is a handful of corporations who not only have all the money, they actually profited off of this pandemic. They actually made more money out of people getting sick and dying in this country. And so I think when you follow the money and you wonder, why would people like that want us to blame someone else? Why would people like that, like you go to affirming not their facts, but just, I see you struggling. I see you having a hard time. I see you feeling like you don't know what to do and where to fit in. That all makes sense to me. Let's figure out together what the source of that is. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Instead of being like, why the fuck do you think that?
Okay, so we'll take one more question. So run up here really quickly, and then we're gonna let Anat go because she has to catch a plane, and I'm not gonna get fault for missing it.
Hi, thank you so much. I loved your presentation. Vanessa Covarrubias, I'm the campaign manager for Dr. Quaid for Congress. My question for you is, I consistently keep bringing up to our consultants and to even everyone else that's running, we need to be out there. We need to start these ads early. And I get bombarded with, Vanessa, it's too early. You need money. And I'm like, but the right is, in my opinion, brainwashing. It's a brainwash that keeps going on. And the more you brainwash, the more it sticks. So
Yeah.
what's your advice on those barriers?
Yeah. So what I would say is that there is a unknown disease that has infected the Democratic Party and the consultant class, which I call pollingism. It is commonly called popularism, and it seems like it employs a logic that, is so clear and true that a 2-year-old child, you ask people on a survey what they care about and then say popular things and don't say unpopular things, but in fact is pollingism. And the reason why it's pollingism is because the way that you win a campaign, the way that you win a debate, and that's what a campaign is, it is a debate, it's just a debate that actually requires action, is by making it about the things that you can win on. It is not about accepting, well, people's top of mind thing is X, which by the way is always going to be the economy. I'm like, I'm going to save you money. You never need to do a poll again asking this. I promise every poll you ever do, people's top issue is going to be the economy. You're done. You don't have to ask again. I promise that's true. I promise that's true in Texas. I promise it's true in California. I promise it's always true. I promise it's true. I'm not saying it's not true. That would be absurd. But the fact of that being people's top issue and that being the thing that's most going to help you is ridiculous. Because in order for that also to be the case, people would have to believe that you're a better solution on the economy. They would have to believe that there is a clear differentiation between you and the opponent on the. So the way that you win debates and elections is by making them about the thing that you can win on. I mean, I know you know this. This is how I do it. So I'm just modeling. I'm just pretending you're the person who has the attitude you're asking about. So I'm not saying this. I'm saying this near you, not at you. Hopefully that feels well, you get that.
Yeah.
And so in order to win, what we need to do is we need to create the weather. not just respond once the storm is already set. Because we already know what they're going to do. What they're going to do is the most obvious thing in the world, which is that they're going to run on crime. The reason why they are sending the military against Americans is because they always employ a surround sound strategy. They don't even need to start ads early because they just do life early. And by life early, I mean the moms going to the school board meeting. I mean the hearings in Congress where the university presidents are like, blah, 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 and they have little clips that they can air. I mean sending troops into cities and showing, for example, in Los Angeles, the Waymo cars on fire and being like, see, we told you. It is crime. See, we told you. In order to get, I mean, they do ads by running them on the news. They don't even need to do ads, right? They just do TV. So that's what they do. They have a surround sound strategy that includes ads, but they really don't rely on ads the way that we do. And what we need to do is create the countervailing surround sound strategy. And the way that you do that is, for example, this is my fantasy. I bring this up in every presentation because if I bring it up in every presentation, it's going to happen. What you do is that you recognize that if you want people to come to your party, you have to throw a better party. You have to, if you want people to come to your cause, you have to be attractive. And this is something they understand. And like any magnet, that means having a polarity. That means drawing people into you, but also you're going to repel some people. And that's also going to get you additional notice. People are actually going to hear what you say. And so what I would say to these consultants is, what are the moments that actually break through? Who are the candidates that anyone even knows their name? Right? And I'm going to be non-Texan for a minute because I don't want to like get into inner scene things about, I don't know, I'm not going to touch specific people from Texas, but a Mallory McMorrow moment. She's a state legislator and she broke through whatever year it was because she made an impassioned speech, right? Why is everyone so psyched about J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois? Like, why is everyone so psyched about Mamdani? If you actually dissect Mamdani's ads, I understand New York City is its own place and every place is a different place. But what he does in his ads are 2/3 not him. They are people running up to him, being excited to see him. People running up to you, being excited to see you, that's not a New York City, that's not a bodega subway thing. Like people can run up to somebody in the middle of a suburban strip mall and be excited to see them too. It's not geographically bound to America's largest city. What he is doing is availing himself of social proof. What he is saying tacitly is, wow, when people see this man, they get really happy. I guess I'm happy. Wow, people really like this person. I guess I like this person. So I'm answering more than your question. What I'm trying to say is the way that I answer it is if you wait until September, October, what that means is you're going to have to fight the battle that they've decided to wage. If right now you, for example, have 10,000 food trucks make a caravan across your district, and not just, taco trucks. I'm talking bibimbap. I'm talking shawarma. I'm talking, whatever is in your community. And you have a 24-hour dance party that is bhangra, salsa, samba, polka, K-pop, waltz, all of it. That is basically like, this is who we are. This is how we do it. Then that becomes something people are attracted to. And it acts as a rebuff to the villains, victims, valets. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. If you're waiting, then basically now you have to write ads about the thing that most, but you have to make, 50 or whatever. My person's also tough on crime, which no one is going to believe because what people believe about candidates is not made out of what candidates say. It's made out of what is said about them. So I don't know if that helps, but I very much feel your pain. I live your pain.
So I just want to say thank you so much, Anat, for joining us today and for doing this for Texas. It means so much to us. So everyone, can we get a round of applause for Anat?
Thank you for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, we really needed it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. And I
Yeah.
wish you happy travels.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for everything you're doing. I believe in you. And yeah, I think you're very much like in the deepest of the deep, but that means you also are the most knowledgeable and you've experienced it and you've been fighting in the trenches. So I actually think, what have you got to lose, honestly? Like you're the ones that should be able to experiment the most and be the most fuck you. It's really time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. 100%. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Bye.